Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. Recently, there have been two rather viral and famous stories that I have grown to adore. One was a movie and the other was a television show. Both of them are slow burns that require you to be deeply invested into the main character above all else. If you do not care about this person that you're following, then you won't care about these stories at all, because they have extremely slow starts. Purposefully so. In fact, they intentionally gatekeep themselves in order to prevent the most annoying people imaginable from entering the fandom.
Go away. Go away, you.
One of these stories is Iron Lung, the movie by Markiplier. You follow Simon, a convicted criminal who is sent down in a submarine to search a blood ocean as punishment for his crimes. The beginning is extremely slow, relying on intrigue into this universe and this character to carry you forward. Even as things progress, you need to care about Simon as an individual in order for you to care about the movie at all. The lore is in fact intriguing, with a majority of the populace disappearing through some type of weird rapture because of some eldritch plot. The setting is fascinating with the blood ocean, but none of that matters if you don't care about the main character, especially because you're trapped in almost a one-on-one scenario with this guy for hours.
Where the f is everyone?
The next story is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which has a bit of a leg up on Iron Lung in terms of being famous and getting attention, because it already is a part of the Song of Fire and Ice universe. But it's significantly slower and more concentrated of a story than a fight for the Iron Throne, with Sir Duncan the Tall trying to fight for his place in this world after his master passes away. While there is an exception that you care about this universe in this case, the focus is much smaller scale and scope now, concentrating on a person who would mean absolutely nothing to the vast majority of the main characters of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Despite the genre difference of sci-fi, eldritch horror, and dark fantasy, these two projects have something similar in common. They are stories focused on smaller scope tales, at least seemingly at the start. You are not supposed to care about the larger scope beyond them, because how in the world are you supposed to understand the greater universe when all you really know is that Simon and Sir Duncan are seemingly desperate to survive and to make a place for themselves in a completely unfair world, which is what makes them endearing, because boy, does that sound familiar in our world.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Now, to be fair, there are world-altering consequences to these tales, but only at the very end, and these stories never promise this aspect at the start of either Iron Lung and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Instead, they promise to tell the tales of these two kicked underdogs. They use the rule of empathy to their advantage, where you care about these people because they are put into unfair situations, with Simon possibly not being fully responsible for what got him into trouble in the first place, and Duncan being dealt bad hand after bad hand in the Song of Fire and Ice universe.
First, let's get one thing straight. I'm not crying. I'm just sweating through my eyes.
Part of me was actually surprised to find that there was, in fact, world-altering consequences at the end of each of these tales, because these were such character-focused stories. But I'm assuming that the reason that these events happened was to give the audience a sense of satisfaction in their investment. What I mean by this is that by watching these stories, they witness significant events where the characters' actions reshape the history of their respective worlds because of their heroes' journeys. That way, people didn't feel like they wasted their time by watching the events unfold.
What the hell is that?
I like to think of this as the Raiders of the Lost Ark conundrum. If you don't know, one of the biggest criticisms of the first Indiana Jones movie is that he isn't exactly necessary for the events of the tale to unfold and end the way that they do. If Indiana Jones never went after the Ark of the Covenant, the events would have basically ended the exact same way. The evil German, can I say the term? Will YouTube punish me for saying a no-no word? Fine. Censorship, the National Socialist Germans Workers' Party soldiers would have all still ended up as melted butter even if Indy never intervened. I swear the censorship on here is insane if I can't get away with calling evil people evil.
My work here is done.
And to be fair, yes, the criticism is in fact technically correct. If Indiana Jones had never intervened, the ending probably would have been the exact same, with the only real significant difference being that Marion probably would have been killed along the way. But ultimately, no, the bad guys wouldn't have won because they were doomed from the start. And the reason that this might ruin the story for people is because they assume that they were watching something with world-bending consequences instead of a deep dive into a character who drastically changes through the course of his hero's journey.
I can explain.
So really, the biggest criticism could be towards the promise at the beginning of the movie rather than the conclusion of it. If you do not know, the hero's journey is the basis of basically all storytelling. The main character receives their call for adventure. After the call, they begin their travels, changing along the way after being taught something by a mentor. After facing challenges, they reach their lowest depths before being reborn as something new, breaking through their previous preconceptions, overcoming a fatal flaw and transforming into something new. They find atonement, overcome their challenges, and return home forever changed.
I've looked at this for 5 hours now.
This is the core for almost every single book, movie, show, or game that you're ever going to experience. Even if it doesn't seem like it's the hero's journey, it is in fact based on the hero's journey in some way. And George Lucas is at his best when he's creating something that follows this outline down to the last detail. It's why Star Wars and Indiana Jones became so beloved. The biggest difference is that if Luke Skywalker didn't go on his hero's journey, the universe would have basically been destroyed. Meanwhile, if Indiana Jones didn't go on his journey, he never would have changed. A handful more people would have died, and the Ark of the Covenant would have still been out there for someone else to find and be victims of later. But yes, ultimately, the enemy would have ended up in the exact same way.
I am inevitable.
The funny thing about this is that the show that people quote the most about this line of thinking is from The Big Bang Theory, which is a sitcom about a bunch of nerds who live next door to a conventionally attractive woman who is trying to become an actress but is really bad at it. And for some reason, this convinced a whole lot of people that Raiders of the Lost Ark is bad when it really isn't. The argument isn't even that great either, because the person who brought it up, Penny, didn't even take into consideration that Marion probably would have been killed along the way without Indy, which wasn't a very girls move on her part, just saying. Hey, this is Love of Storytelling who was editing the video, and I remembered that it was Amy who ruined Raiders of the Lost Ark for Sheldon and not Penny, so just adding that there, I made a mistake.
Really makes you think.
Now, I actually don't hate The Big Bang Theory. I don't think it's a great show. The flaws are astronomical, to say the least, but it's a fantastic comfort watch. What I mean by this is that when my wife was having severe gallbladder issues leading up to the surgery to remove said organ, this was the one show which gave her comfort. Through the extreme pain and unbearable nausea she experienced when she ate anything at any point in time, she could turn this on and be distracted from her extreme suffering. And this is a woman who refused to go to the hospital under some of the most severe circumstances. So this told me that she thought she was dying several times over. So much so that we did our one and only ER visit with her.
Well, somebody better be dying.
I'm dying.
I made a mistake!
If you argue that The Big Bang Theory wasn't very funny, or that the laugh track was annoying, or that you hate the portrayal of nerds, then I have no real arguments for you, because you're right. I like the show because it brought my wife comfort, and literally the worst physical discomfort that she has experienced in the 7 years that we've been together. Is the show good? I wouldn't say so. Do I like it? Yes, because it was literally a bright spot in our lives that allowed my wife to fall asleep even as her insides burned to the point that she thought that she was going to vomit up her own stomach.
Oh, that's real nice.
It's a rule that I have. You are welcome to enjoy and like stories that aren't good. Just admit that they're not good, but you'll like them anyway. I do that with pro wrestling of all things. I don't see why people can't do the same thing for other projects. And to be fair, from a writing, acting, cinematography, and choreography perspective, Raiders of the Lost Ark is far from bad. Any movie which is so iconic that its opening scene has literally become a show in and of itself is far from objectively terrible.
Oh, I forgot how bad it looks.
I've seen worse.
That is the first reason why Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark is far from pointless. Entertainment value in and of itself is still value. Basically every action scene in this film is iconic, from Indy simply pulling out a gun and shooting the guy with the swords, to Indy riding a plane or a submarine, and even pointing a rocket launcher at the Ark of the Covenant. There is no denying how iconic this movie is, even compared to other parts of the franchise, even Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade, although they're at least better than Crystal Skull and Dial of Doom.
This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
Sometimes a piece of art or entertainment has value simply for meaning something to someone at the right time in their lives. The reach they have is the most important aspect of them, even if they're not technically flawless. I think that the recent show Pluribus actually demonstrated this well. The hive mind was unable to differentiate between art because of how the entertainment influence different personalities, meaning that romantasy, explicit material for women, was ranked equally with William Shakespeare's plays.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Which makes sense. We're talking about if the combined intelligence and perspective of every single human being was united. No one life or contribution can mean more than anything else. Doing so would break the chain of empathy and compassion which unites the hive mind. But in real life, your trash entertainment doesn't equal to your top 10s out of 10. The fact that I can watch all 4 seasons of Lucha Underground on loop doesn't compare to how amazing shows like Better Call Saul, The Glory, and The Good Place are from a technical standpoint. But if you like the idea of a Mortal Kombat show, Lucha Underground is a show that exists. I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there. It's not the best ever, but I liked it.
Well, hang on, you've just... No, I like it. This is brilliant, but I like this.
In terms of inspiring people and other pieces of work, Raiders of the Lost Ark continues to be the standard bearer even until this day. If there is any type of story which involves raiding tombs at all, like Uncharted and Tomb Raider, I can assure you that Indiana Jones is the Bible from which they base everything upon. In that way, Raiders of the Lost Ark is in fact extremely influential in our real world, even more than the ripple effects that it has in the fictional world where gods and aliens actually exist. The entertainment value and real life reaching influence makes it far from pointless.
You bow to no one.
Of course, there is a second metric to judge this on as well, though. Besides influence and entertainment value, there are branching consequences to Indy's first ever journey. Not canonically, of course, from our perspective, from what we saw movie to movie. Temple of Doom still exists as a prequel, which is fine, just the weakest of the actual good movies, for reasons that we will get into later. But no, because despite what anyone might claim, Indiana Jones did actually have an influence in the world during Raiders of the Lost Ark, just on a smaller scale based on individual characters.
So I am confusion. Why is this one Kansas?
But this one is not Arkansas.
If you want a decent comparison, in my mind, I would bring up Mass Effect. It is a sci-fi trilogy, and only a trilogy, nothing more, where you play as Commander Shepard, who is trying to save the galaxy from the Reapers. My favorite game is number 2, but there are a lot of criticisms in that it feels like a side story compared to the galaxy-ending consequences of the original and the conclusion of the trilogy, which is completely fair. Mass Effect 2 is truly not about how you shape the world, but the characters across the galaxy in preparation for the war to come. Although the DLC does drastically shape the expanded universe far more, so there is that.
But wait! There's more!
While the first game is about learning about the threat of the Reapers and delaying their arrival, and the third game is about outright defeating them, the second game is about building a crew to stop the construction of a single Reaper. The entire story is about recruiting and bonding with other characters in order to make sure that they survive a mission which is inevitably not meant to be survivable.
So that's it? What, we some kind of suicide squad?
In fairness, technically speaking, you could in fact entirely skip the story of 2 and not really influence 3, except for the important fact that these are the most important people in the galaxy, and helping them creates good outcomes in 3. That's the type of storytelling involved. People cannot envision and internalize grand concepts like this a lot of the times. That's why you need to bring everything down to a smaller, more individual level. People can easily conceptualize individual outcomes more than grand ideas and concepts of several worlds and species being destroyed. Sometimes it just feels too impersonal, like you're being the good guy for good guy's sake, when that's not always the fun thing to do.
Boring!
That's what Star Wars did originally. You had no idea about who these individual side characters were or the worlds that were being destroyed or threatened. Indiana Jones, however, takes it down to a smaller scale. He saves individual people throughout his journey, literally the friends he made along the way. Most specifically, Marion, who is the love of his life despite what any of the other movies have to say about it. Not only that, Indy does prevent more people from becoming victims of the Ark of the Covenant. Not to say that the enemy in this movie are victims, it's more that Indy keeps other people from searching for it and getting themselves melted into butter as well.
I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world!
It's those individual people and stories that Indiana Jones influences that brings the second great reason behind why all this matters. No, in the grand scheme of the world, he didn't single-handedly bring an end to World War II, but he did make a much smaller impact on the world by creating connections with the people around him, and that is something that we can all relate to. I don't know about you, but I personally, despite what any of you might think, have not saved the entire planet from an objectively evil threat.
Dragging behind you the stone of shame.
Most of us have the reach of people like the characters in The Office do. People who get up, do their boring jobs, and go home. But it's still one of the most popular and hilarious shows and comedies ever created. Yet no one ever claims that this one is pointless. Why? Because you grow to care about and love the characters. Okay, you spend a lot more time with Michael, Pam, Dwight, Jim, and everyone else compared to Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the point still stands. If you didn't care about any of these people, none of these stories would work at all.
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
The Office becomes funnier and more endearing the more you understand these characters. Well, you know, up until Michael leaves. But there's always a point where a story is supposed to end. The reason behind this is because a story is a segment of a character's life, demonstrating their hero's journey. And that's what happened to Michael. In fact, every main character basically found their outcome, and it was time to move on when Michael left because their lives were forever changed by that point, but instead we were just watching a bloated epilogue.
Stop it! Cut it out!
Like we watched Michael, Dwight, Jim, and Pam's ultimate journeys completed to the point that the later seasons seemed rather redundant, we also witnessed the full end of Indy's journey in Ark of the Covenant. The journey had been completed, the Ark had been tucked away where it couldn't hurt anyone else. Top men have locked it away, although I do have to say I find the concept of a magical box out in the world capable of melting people's faces far more likely and probable than the United States government being able to keep anything secret or under lock and key for more than 2 seconds.
Alan, we are
So there was entertainment value, real world influence, fictional world influence involving characters and an overarching goal, and finally the piece de resistance, the true reason behind basically all forms of stories. The conclusion of the hero's journey. The character development is the point, the journey where the hero returns home forever changed. And let me ask you, dear viewer, would you say that Indiana Jones, skeptical loner professor of archaeology, returned home forever changed after Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Coincidence? I think not!
There is no point in which the outline of the hero's journey is dictated by how much the hero creates change in their own world. The point of the story is not about altering the external, but the internal. Yes, symbolically, writers do tend to create outward manifestations of the change in order to create extra satisfaction in the audience. But that would mean absolutely nothing if the hero, the main protagonist, the person that we like and are following and are invested in, does not change, unless, of course, this is a static character arc. Static characters do not change. Their story is a modification of the hero's journey, basically a flip-flop, where they start out good and have their ideals tested against an unfair world until they prove that they were right in the end. And the arc is them changing the world, or rather, at least, they change some of the people in the world. If you want a perfect example of this, look at Hacksaw Ridge. Based on a true story, we follow Private Desmond Doss, a soldier in World War II who refuses to pick up a gun or shoot anyone.
That was the plan. Not a great plan.
As you can imagine, everyone other than his sweetheart Dorothy openly mocks him for this decision, pushing him further and further until the time comes where he puts his body on the line in an epic battle, saving wounded soldiers and turning the tides to his side. His literal faith as a Christian is tested and pushed to the absolute limit, but he holds true and everyone admits that they were wrong about him. He wasn't a coward, he was the bravest of all by fighting his way and standing up for what he believed in. Because he never told other soldiers that they shouldn't fight to kill. He wasn't stupid. He knows what war was. He simply couldn't bring himself to do so and contributed in other ways despite the peer pressure against him.
Hey, who left this bowl of onions here?
I bring Hacksaw Ridge up because it actually shares something in common with Indiana Jones. And no, it has nothing to do with World War II, although that is something that they have in common. Instead, it's something that you actually rarely see in Hollywood or even in foreign stories nowadays. A somewhat positive look at faith, because Indy starts Raiders of the Lost Ark as a jaded man who would never actually believe to look away from the Ark of the Covenant when it was opened, or would willingly accept that something so historically significant needed to be hidden away so that no one would ever look at it again.
Nope, never again.
That is his character arc. I don't know if this version of the Ark of the Covenant is actually the same as it would be from the original tales, meaning holy and all that, but it's certainly a power that Indiana Jones couldn't begin to comprehend. And by the end of the movie, he understood and accepted that he shouldn't have any say in this, that no human being should be in contact with this. Personally, as an agnostic asshole that bounces around all over the place, I don't particularly know if this fits in with real life, but if I gained solid proof like Indiana Jones did in this movie, to the point that some supernatural power, whether it be God or something else, obliterates an entire battalion of soldiers but spares me because of my reverence, yeah, I'd be convinced.
Guys, come on, can we all say a prayer for the victims of the plague, please?
Yes.
Heavenly Father, we ask for your mercy and grace for the 25 million plague victims.
To be fair, Temple of Doom kind of ruined that character arc by introducing supernatural elements in a story set a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark. Once again, not a terrible movie, but is far from a perfect prequel, kind of diminishing the original in a way, with a love interest which is destined not to be around in a year's time in world, a sidekick who will never be mentioned again, and an introduction to higher powers that most definitely would have made Indiana Jones more weary at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well then, see? It says let us go.
It's a matter of interpretation.
Good movie, bad prequel. Unlike everything I mentioned in my previous video about perfect prequels, because Indiana Jones basically forgot everything he learned in that film by the time the original started. The separation makes it feel like everything a part of it was simply a dream, which is one of the single worst tropes in the history of fiction, where a character wakes up realizing that the craziness wasn't real and continues on with their lives like nothing happened.
Well, this sucks.
The best use of such a trope is for comedic purposes, like with the Phineas and Ferb episode, where they were actually busted for one of their inventions, but this turned out to be a dream inside of another dream in order to get a chuckle out of you. Or it could be the case where the dream was actually real all along. The person's mind was simply transferred to another world, like the Wizard of Oz, because all other projects in this universe reveal that Dorothy was actually in Oz, to say the very least. Plus, it still had the value of entertainment and the other value of the conclusion of a character arc with Dorothy, where she does grow to value her home and her loved ones above all else. So the waking up part works in this specific case, especially because this film is almost a century old at this point and needs to be looked at differently nowadays compared to more modern projects. If you remember, there were once rumors that The Walking Dead was going to end with Rick waking up in the hospital to discover that everything which happened had been a dream. All of the death, suffering, and character development would have been for absolutely nothing. While I don't like how the show continued on forever and ever, this would have been an even worse conclusion, outright declaring that nothing mattered and you wasted your time. But at least the graphic novels did end pretty well, all things considering. I like that one.
Yeah, that's one fine-looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that?
But in the case of Indiana Jones, the lack of continued character development is why Temple of Doom is the weakest of the good movies, coming off as more of an entertaining dream more than anything else, kind of like The Walking Dead would have been if it was all made up in Rick's head. This is far different than from The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones goes on a search for his father and the Holy Grail with a far different mindset than at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. He does actually respect and believe in things far beyond his control. There is far more humility in him now. Instead, most of his arc has to do with his extreme daddy issues, which, in a way, mirrors the relationship between Jesus the Son and God the Father.
I understood that reference.
Because, look, The Last Crusade firmly places Indiana Jones into the realm of Christianity basically being the true religion of that universe, which is fine. Smiling Friends is 100% set in a Christian universe for comedic purposes. The Exorcist does something similar for horror, which is fine. Just like how I accept where Greek, Norse, Japanese, or Egyptian mythology are real in a piece of fiction. I watch Bollywoods all the time where Hinduism is treated as the one true religion. I can accept that some type of gods are real as long as the story is internally consistent. It's when aliens or whatever Dial of Doom introduced and breaks the lore that I start to question things.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
Indiana Jones remembered what came before during the Last Crusade. His hunt for the Holy Grail probably wouldn't have been successful if not for his search for the Ark of the Covenant. This is the ultimate meaning and purpose behind his original hero's journey. He changed. He became a better, more rounded person. It's the reason people tend to rank Last Crusade above Temple of Doom, because even if they couldn't articulate the particular reasons they felt this way, it did feel like the continuation mattered and was necessary for the character of Indiana Jones, rather than just a one-off story that ultimately ended up contradicting the original film in some ways. Unfortunately, that's George Lucas's greatest weakness. He is not always the best on expanding his stories without significant help from outside sources.
Help me! Help me! Help me!
And if you want the perfect example of a story not mattering at all because the characters involved basically forgot all about it, look no further than Star vs. the Forces of Evil, as a reverse isekai, and an isekai is a Japanese term for a story about a normal person being summoned to a magical world. And yes, the Chronicles of Narnia and the Wizard of Oz are technically isekai. I don't make the rules, I just live with them, I'm just saying.
Keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
In the show, Star Butterfly is a wild magical princess sent to Earth in order to become more mature. She's joined by Marco Diaz, an overly safe person and worrywart, as she fights, well, the forces of evil who tend to be rather wacky at the beginning. And the show was certainly not made for me. I was not in mind when they were conceiving of this concept. The only reason I ever got into it when the second season started releasing was because of clips I saw involving the main villain Toffee, who really stood out compared to all of the comedy-based antagonists surrounding him.
Just tell me, did I have any part to play in this?
No.
Do you know what my favorite episode of this show is? Running with Scissors. Marco borrows Star's interdimensional scissors, which can cut across dimensions, and he does this for a mundane task. Unfortunately, it turns out that Princess Ponyhead, no, I did not make that up, stole those scissors from their creator Hekapoo. When the creator takes back what's hers, Marco challenges her to a long mission so that he can get back something that he borrowed from his best friend.
How is a nigga gonna borrow a fry? Is you gonna give it back?
Within a few minutes on Earth, Star notices that he's gone and chases after him, only to find that he's experienced 20 years in Hekapoo's dimension. In that time, he's finally beaten the challenge and earned the scissors back. When he returns home, he de-ages. Star dismisses the events, but Marco is left shell-shocked as he numbly walks around his old childhood room, numbly realizing that he has forgotten the password to the laptop he used every single day before the events of fighting Hekapoo.
That was weird.
And do you want to know what the show did with this character development? Absolutely nothing. Marco reverted back to normal as though it was all a dream. Ugh, I hate that trope. He acted the same way basically the day after. The scissors didn't change. His friends, family, and girlfriend didn't notice a difference in him. The most change was that he now knew Hekapoo. That's it. Instead, the show immediately shifted into shipping drama with him and Star forgetting the serious, interesting concept that they just laid before us because they didn't have the writing capabilities to pull it off. and this trend continued through the final 2 seasons until it concluded with an ending so bad that I would compare it to Game of Thrones Season 8.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Now that is pointless. That is a waste of time. That is sitting in a hot car within a traffic jam without your phone working. You gain nothing from it. You're not entertained by anything other than your own frustration. You don't have anything to distract you. You're not recharging after a hard day. You're not learning anything or achieving anything. It is 100% a waste of the precious, limited amount of time you have to spend in your life.
Well, that was pointless.
And finally, because I don't want to end off on such a negative note, I want to give another positive example of a story where the characters change but really don't influence the world. Simply look at the written work of Joe Abercrombie. The Heroes is a standalone book set between the 2 trilogies of the First Law universe. You watch a 3-day battle unfold before your eyes. Most of the characters you follow are but single individual soldiers, and the biggest character arc comes from an absolute nobody who doesn't do a single thing throughout the book but realizes that war is stupid and decides to go home and be a farmer like his mother once. And it's implied that he will live a much happier, longer life with such a trade. The point wasn't what he achieved, but what he learned along the way. That's the investment of the story, the hero's journey. That's the reason, just like with Indiana Jones.
You have chosen wisely.
So no, Raiders of the Lost Ark is far from pointless. No, technically Indy didn't defeat the bad guys. They would have ended up in the exact same situation without his involvement. But he did save people along the way. He did manage to keep the Ark of the Covenant from taking anyone else. He did entertain us, and he did in fact do the right thing by fighting against evil. He did experience his hero's journey, overcoming his own hubris along the way. That's the entire point. We don't need earth-shattering consequences in our stories. We don't need the main character to change the world. We just need to have the main character change themselves. That's why I say that the problem was the promise at the start of Indiana Jones and not the ending, because all anyone can do is really change themselves. Just look at the single most powerful people on this planet. In the grand scheme of things, how much do politicians actually change? Basically nothing. On either sides of the aisle. The most they really influence is how much money is in their individual pockets.
Oh, I made myself sad.
For the vast majority of people, tempering oneself into the best version they can be is the ultimate good. That is the only real decision and influence that we can have in this world. We can't change the world, stopping the greatest threats known to humanity, but we can change our world, who we are, what we value, how we interact with not only strangers but the people that truly matter to us. No, Raiders of the Lost Ark wasn't necessary to stop World War II, but it was necessary for Indiana Jones to become the man he needed to become.
Impressive. Very nice.
Of course, this is forgetting the terrible final 2 movies. Dear baby Jesus, have mercy on me. Those movies are so objectively bad. Maybe just have Indy retired, happily married, and trying to keep his son out of this nonsense, but ultimately gets dragged into something against his will because someone threatens his family, pull a Red Dead Redemption or something. I don't know. This is not hard stuff. There's about 50 million better ideas than what we actually got.
Disappointed!
But what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What makes a story pointless? Were you ever convinced that Indy wasn't necessary in Raiders of the Lost Ark? What do you think about the other stories I mentioned? What stories that you know and love that you can put into this line of thinking? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you disagree with everything I have to say, that is perfectly fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
Well, that's the end of me.
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. You bye. Boom.
Do not despair.